The Newsline.
After reflecting on the events that unfolded a few weeks ago, I felt compelled to draw your attention to something that many may have overlooked. Since the inception of the Khamenei regime, Iran has pursued a long-term ambition to become the dominant superpower in the Middle East. But unlike other nations in the region, Iran's strategy has revolved around a single goal: to wipe the state of Israel off the map. This long-term plan was built on three key pillars. 1. Developing a nuclear weapons program. 2. Advancing a ballistic missile program. 3. Establishing and funding militant proxy groups across the region. By proxy groups, I don't mean ragtag outfits. These are heavily armed, politically influential forces, essentially parallel states that answer to Iran. Iran invested billions of dollars and decades of planning into this strategy. The model they followed is known as the deep state, a term often used to describe covert, powerful networks that operate behind the scenes of a legitimate government pushing their own agenda. These deep states can be homegrown or backed by foreign powers. In this case, Iran installed deep states in several Arab countries, effectively controlling them through its proxies, while the official leadership remained a facade. Let's look at a few examples. Syria. Under President Bashar al-Assad, Iran supported the regime through its proxies and played a major role in helping Assad retain power. However, with the rise of Ahmed al-Sharaa following a rebellion, Iran ultimately failed to establish lasting control over Syria. Lebanon. Iran's success story. Hezbollah was formed in 1982, and by 2008, it had risen to dominate both politically and militarily. It became the true power in Lebanon, Iran's deep state, or as some might say, Khamenei's cat's paw. Gaza and the West Bank. In the early 1990s, Iran began supporting Hamas. By 2006, Hamas had won the Palestinian elections and taken over the Gaza Strip. Since then, Gaza has effectively become another Iranian stronghold. Yemen. Though Iran hasn't fully established a deep state there, it operates through the Houthis, who control much of northern Yemen, including ports, airports, and their own quasi-state infrastructure. Iraq. Another stronghold. Iran's influence has been exerted through various militias and groups, including Shia militias and those formerly affiliated with ISIS. The ultimate objective? To surround Israel with loyal militant groups and puppet regimes. In effect, Iran wanted to plant seeds of its ideology and power on every border of Israel so that when the time came, those seeds would rise and help crush the Jewish state. But here's the irony. The moment Iran had been planning for all these years arrived at a time, in a place, and in a manner they never expected. It's a geopolitical twist worth studying. Could it have been a miracle? Perhaps. After all, the history of the Jewish people is full of such miraculous turnarounds. One such event, arguably the most shocking, occurred on October 7, 2023. The brutal massacre by Hamas triggered a chain of events so advantageous to Israel that some conspiracy theorists even accused Israel of orchestrating the massacre itself. However, those familiar with the history of Israel firmly reject such allegations. Never in its history has Israel sacrificed its own citizens for the so-called greater good. There is no precedent, no example in its entire past of such inhumane actions. It's simply unimaginable that Israel would do something so cruel when nothing of that nature has ever occurred before. That said, what began as a devastating tragedy ultimately turned into a miraculous turning point for Israel. The militia groups founded and funded by Iran were brought to their knees, one by one. Ironically, when Iran needed them the most, none of these groups could offer meaningful support. Now consider this. What if things had gone differently? What if Hezbollah hadn't been weakened after rushing in to assist Hamas? What if they had launched their own ballistic missiles? What if Hamas and its allies had joined in with a coordinated assault, unleashing thousands of rockets all at once? We know Israel managed to withstand a barrage of over 550 ballistic missiles and more than 1,000 kamikaze drones launched by Iran over 12 days. But had Hezbollah joined in, the pressure on Israel could have been overwhelming. The consequences could have been catastrophic. Iran's long-standing ambition to wipe Israel off the map might have come terrifyingly close to being realized. And yet, it didn't happen. Iran's plan, decades in the making, collapsed spectacularly. Not through diplomacy, not through negotiations, but through a series of unexpected events that no one, including Iran, could have foreseen. Some would call it luck, others would call it strategy, but many see it for what it truly was, a miracle. None of the proxy groups founded or funded by Iran came to its aid. Hezbollah didn't fire a single ballistic missile. The Houthis, fearing U.S. retaliation, rushed to sign a peace treaty. Just imagine for a moment what could have happened had the Houthis launched sustained attacks on ships in the Red Sea. Yes, they occasionally fired a missile or two to keep up appearances, but none of them even reached Israeli airspace. Meanwhile, Hamas was trapped in its own tunnel networks. Most of Hezbollah's senior leadership had already been sent to meet their maker, and the rest went into hiding, tails tucked between their legs. Iran stood alone in its moment of need, abandoned by the very forces it had trained, armed, and funded for years. Israel brought Iran to its knees. The Israeli attacks were so effective that Iran's air defense systems were reduced to rubble. In addition, Israel successfully mapped strategic targets for future operations. Within the first 10 minutes of the conflict, Israel eliminated key military commanders, crippled Iran's intelligence services, sent Supreme Leader Khamenei into hiding, and left the IRGC in shock. Yes, Iran did manage to fire ballistic missiles, but those attacks failed to break Israel's resolve. While 28 people were tragically killed and some buildings were damaged, Israel stood firm. Today, Israel can strike Iran again, anytime, anywhere. Iran's nuclear weapons production has come to a standstill. Its ballistic missile production has been crippled. Half of its stockpiled missiles are gone. Is that not a miracle? The October 7th massacre was one of the darkest days in Israel's modern history, its worst loss since the Holocaust. But instead of collapsing under the weight of grief, Israel chose to rise. That brutal attack by Hamas didn't break Israel. It galvanized it. It became the driving force behind a full-scale response that dismantled Iran's regional terror network. Today, after decades of relentless threats, Israel can finally breathe. The looming shadow of Iran's nuclear ambitions is gone. Its missiles no longer threaten Israeli skies, and its proxy militias, once feared, are now in hiding, trembling at the very mention of Israel's name. This was not just a military success. It was a divine turnaround, a blow turned into strength, a tragedy turned into triumph. The purpose of this video was to give you a basic understanding of the miraculous events surrounding Israel and its military achievements. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to our channel for future updates and help spread the word by sharing it with others.
Subscribe us for more details.